Power is not found in the crowd. It is born in the silence where no applause exists. The man who loves being alone does not fear being forgotten. He fears being deluded. Solitude is not his weakness. It is his weapon. In a world where every man sells pieces of his soul for validation, he sits apart, unbought, unowned, untamed. He understands that power begins where noise ends. The crowd believes power is in command, in control, in attention, but attention is the most expensive form of servitude. To seek it is to kneel before it. The dangerous man withdraws not because he hates the world, but because he refuses to become its entertainment. He watches in silence, studying the movement of others as a hunter studies the wind. In solitude, he sharpens what society dulls the mind. The mind that no longer needs approval becomes sharper than a blade, because it is free from the rust of emotion. The world fears that kind of independence. It cannot negotiate with him because he does not crave its currency. His silence makes others speak too much. His calm makes others nervous. His absence feels like power because it reveals how addicted they are to presence. Solitude teaches him patience, and patience is the luxury of those who are not desperate. The weak rush because they fear being forgotten. The strong wait because they know time bends to those who can endure it. A man who can wait without boredom is a man who already commands his own empire. He learns that every empire is first conquered within. Before commanding armies, one must command impulses. The dangerous man who loves being alone learns that people are loyal not to truth, but to comfort. They follow whoever reduces their fear, so he never wastes his strength explaining himself. He acts. Explanation belongs to the powerless. The moment you begin to justify, you admit that the crowd has the right to judge. He owes them nothing. Power owes no one understanding it, only owes results. He sees human nature as it is, not as it pretends to be. He watches how love becomes leverage, how loyalty becomes debt, how friendship becomes surveillance. Every smile hides a motive. Every alliance hides a test. He is not cynical, he is awake. And in awakening, he sacrifices innocence for clarity. To see clearly is to suffer silently, but it is also to rule internally. Isolation teaches him the art of invisibility, to move unseen, to influence without noise, to disappear before being targeted. He learns that in politics, as in war, the visible man dies first. Visibility is vulnerability. The true strategist hides not in darkness, but in plain sight, cloaked by ordinariness. The moment they underestimate him, he wins. He walks through betrayal as if through rain, uncomfortable but expected. He does not curse it, he studies it. Betrayal is not an accident of character, it is an instrument of power. Those who betray reveal themselves before he ever needs to expose them. He collects their disloyalty as intelligence, not injury. He knows that power is never lost, it merely changes hands. Alone, he builds an inner fortress that cannot be invaded. He needs no one to defend him, because his discipline defends him. He trains himself to feel hunger without begging, pain without breaking, solitude without madness. Every weakness starved becomes strength. Every desire mastered becomes weapon. He learns to eat from his own hands, to be the source, not the seeker. He understands that leadership is not popularity, it is endurance. To rule is to carry the burden of others' illusions while never believing them yourself. He lets others dream of virtue while he studies outcomes. Morality is a luxury the powerful cannot always afford, but hypocrisy is a tax he never pays. His actions are aligned with results, not appearances. When he speaks, his words carry the weight of silence, because silence gave them shape. Men who live in noise speak too quickly, think too slowly, and regret too late. But the man who loves being alone measures every word as a weapon, each syllable placed where it cuts, not where it pleases. He fears neither exile nor rejection. For him, rejection is merely a test of loyalty to self. He has walked through loneliness long enough to see that it is not emptiness, it is purification. In solitude, the false parts of himself died. What remained was something unbreakable. A will unchained from need. That will is his throne. The dangerous man who loves being alone is not against society. He simply sees through it. He sees that every handshake is a silent negotiation, every smile a disguise, every virtue a strategy. He learns to read intention the way sailors read the sea by its invisible currents. He moves not with emotion, but with weather. He understands that most men want power without cost, loyalty without testing, victory without isolation. But he has learned that solitude is not the punishment of the powerful, it is their training ground. The throne is built in the cave, long before it is placed in the palace. He keeps his distance not out of arrogance, but preservation. The crowd consumes what it admires. To remain powerful, he must remain misunderstood. Let them misread his silence as weakness. The wolf never corrects the sheep. He has buried his need to be loved and replaced it with the discipline to be respected. Respect is born from fear wrapped in admiration. Love fades with familiarity. Fear remains loyal. The dangerous man knows this and governs accordingly, not with cruelty, but with consequence. He walks the line between trust and suspicion as a tightrope walker over an abyss. He trusts enough to move forward, but never enough to fall, for he knows that even allies dream of thrones. In politics, every embrace hides a blade. The wise man learns to feel for the metal while smiling. The dangerous man who loves being alone has accepted one truth. Every gain demands isolation. Every ascent demands silence. The higher he rises, the fewer hands he can hold. Power thins the air around him until only those who can breathe discipline remain. That loneliness is not his punishment, it is his proof. He has learned that control is not domination, it is restraint. To dominate others is temporary. To master oneself is perpetual. He governs his anger, his lust, his vanity, until they obey him as subjects obey a ruler. The world cannot enslave a man who has already disciplined his own chaos. He sees that ambition without solitude becomes corruption. Men who cannot stand alone will always sell themselves to be seen. But the one who can stand alone builds empires unseen, because he no longer needs applause to believe in his dominion. The crowd will never understand him. They will call him cold, detached, ruthless, but he is merely disciplined. Their warmth is weakness disguised as virtue. Their openness is an invitation to manipulation. They think they are free because they speak loudly. He knows he is free because he can remain silent. And so he walks not as a hermit, but as a strategist. Not as a saint, but as a sovereign. He does not seek followers, he seeks clarity. He does not seek peace, he seeks precision. In solitude, he finds both. Because the dangerous man who loves being alone does not need to conquer others to feel powerful. He only needs to conquer the self that once begged for validation. Once that self is dead, no force on earth can command him. He moves quietly, speaks rarely, thinks deeply, acts decisively. And when he does appear, he does not compete, he concludes. The world mistakes his distance for mystery, but it is only discipline. They mistake his calm for detachment, but it is control. They mistake his silence for absence, but it is observation. He has no need to be seen, because those who must be seen are already servants of visibility. He builds his power in the shadows, and when the time comes, his presence will feel like fate, sudden, inevitable, and absolute. For the dangerous man who loves being alone knows the throne is not taken by noise, it is inherited by silence. He learns that silence is not emptiness but architecture. Every moment of solitude becomes a stone in the fortress of his composure. The crowd thinks he retreats because he is afraid. They do not see that he withdraws to reload. They imagine isolation as defeat, but he knows it is incubation. While they exhaust themselves performing relevance, he is studying patterns, learning how the world breathes, how power circulates through whispers and glances more than through speeches and banners. When he returns, he does not return to join them. He returns to rule them because he understands what they cannot. Noise is not strength, it is leakage. He has realized that control begins where reaction ends. The average man is a puppet of emotion, pulled by every insult, every compliment, every rumor. But the one who loves being alone has rewired his instincts. He has burned away the need to respond. He does not chase explanations. He does not beg for understanding. He does not engage in the theater of justification. He understands that words are traps. Each answer ties you to the expectations of the one who asked. Power lies not in being right, but in being silent long enough for others to reveal themselves. In Solitude, he studies betrayal not as a wound, but as a map. Each betrayal marks a coordinate on the human heart where greed, envy, and fear intersect. He learns where men break, how loyalty bends, how fear infects. He learns to test devotion with distance, not demand. True allegiance does not need proximity. It endures silence. It survives misunderstanding. And if it dies, then it was never allegiance, only convenience. He watches how those who fear loneliness become addicted to alliance. They collect friends like soldiers collect armor, believing more protection means more security. But armor makes you heavy. You cannot move with freedom if every relationship must be carried. He chooses lightness. He does not hate people. He simply refuses to depend on them. Dependence is the first form of defeat. The one who depends cannot choose. And the one who cannot choose is already enslaved. The dangerous man who loves being alone learns to command time. When others waste their hours chasing approval, he builds his empire in the unseen hours. Power is not taken, it is accumulated quietly, minute by minute, decision by decision, until the day others notice what he already knew, that the crown was his long before it was visible. He understands that patience is the camouflage of conquest. The hunter who moves too soon becomes prey. The one who waits becomes inevitable. He knows that leadership demands the courage to disappoint. Every ruler must betray someone's expectation, whether friend, ally, or follower. To rule without guilt is to understand that pleasing all is the fastest path to powerlessness. He chooses respect over affection, results over applause. He understands that mercy without balance breeds rebellion, and that cruelty without measure breeds ruin. His decisions are precise because his solitude has stripped him of sentimentality. Solitude teaches proportion, how to feel without drowning, how to care without collapsing, how to cut without cruelty. He studies how perception governs fate. The crowd believes power is what is possessed, but he knows it is what is projected. Reputation is armor stronger than armies. The wise man controls not only his actions, but his image. Because men do not act according to truth, they act according to belief. He crafts the illusion he needs, not the confession they demand. He reveals only what strengthens the myth, never the man. For in politics, the myth must live longer than the body that created it. He moves through the corridors of ambition like a ghost felt but not seen. Those who try to read him find only reflections of their own hunger. His stillness becomes a mirror, their noise becomes their confession. They underestimate him because he does not compete. They mistake detachment for disinterest, but detachment is the highest form of control. When one is not moved by the tides of approval, he becomes the tide itself. He understands that to control others, one must first understand what they worship. Men bow not only to gods, but to illusions, status, wealth, recognition. He studies these faiths with the precision of a priest and the detachment of a surgeon. He learns to feed their hunger while starving his own. For the one who can fulfill the needs of others without becoming bound by them becomes indispensable, and indispensability is the quietest form of dominance. He sees the fragility of human conviction. Today's loyalty becomes tomorrow's envy. Today's praise becomes tomorrow's accusation. The dangerous man trusts the cycle more than the promise. He expects betrayal the way sailors expect storms, not with fear, but with preparation. He knows that loyalty is strongest when it is not needed, and weakest when it is demanded, so he never begs for it. He inspires it through consistency. Reliability, not charisma, is the currency of power. He has learned that solitude reveals two kinds of men, those who seek escape from the world and those who seek mastery over it. He belongs to the second kind. His isolation is not retreat, it is rehearsal. He studies how power decays from within, how comfort dulls discipline, how abundance weakens the instinct for strategy. He guards his mind like a fortress, knowing that indulgence is the first assassin of kings. He walks through luxury as though it were a battlefield. Every comfort is a potential chain, every pleasure a potential spy. He partakes but never belongs. He enjoys but never depends. His pleasure serves his will, not the other way around. The world calls this coldness, but he calls it clarity. Warmth is dangerous when it blinds. He prefers the chill of realism. It keeps his instincts sharp. He does not dream of peace, for he knows peace is an illusion built on suppressed conflict. Instead, he dreams of balance, the art of containing war within boundaries. True mastery is not the absence of enemies, but the ability to control the tempo of their attacks. The man who loves being alone understands that even silence is a battlefield. Every day he disciplines his thoughts as a general drills soldiers. Because undisciplined thoughts are insurgents within the mind, and the first conquest of power is always internal. He understands that love itself is political. To be loved is to be vulnerable. To love is to risk dependency. He practices affection without attachment, loyalty without blindness, compassion without surrender. He can walk away without bitterness, forgive without weakness, and command without arrogance. His love does not blind him, it refines him, and those who receive it feel both comforted and unsettled because they sense it is given freely, yet could vanish without warning. The dangerous man who loves being alone has mastered disappearance. He can vanish from any relationship, any room, any ideology without collapse. He leaves behind no chaos, only absence, and absence, to those who depended on him, feels like loss. That is the final proof of power, when your silence creates more impact than others' speeches. He no longer seeks immortality through legacy. He knows that history is not written by the truthful, but by the survivors. Legacy is only another illusion, another theater for those who need to be remembered. He needs no remembrance. His satisfaction lies in mastery itself, not its recognition. Power for him is not the applause of men, but the quiet knowledge that he could have ruled and chose when and how. He moves as time moves, inevitable, invisible, impartial. The crowd will never know his name, but they will live under the consequences of his design. The dangerous man who loves being alone has become the architect of unseen order, the ruler of invisible empires, the shadow behind the throne. And in the end, when all noise fades, only he remains silent, disciplined, untouchable. For he understands what the world never will, that the greatest power is not the ability to command others, but the strength to remain uncorrupted by their need for him. He walks through the ruins of other men's ambitions and feels no pity, only understanding. He knows that most of them destroyed themselves not through failure, but through hunger. They wanted too much, too quickly. They could not bear the long silence between seed and bloom. They mistook motion for progress, noise for importance, and attention for authority. But the dangerous man has no such illusions. He knows that true power grows underground, unseen, uncelebrated, uncontested, until one day it breaks the surface fully formed, unchallengeable, and absolute. He does not chase the throne. He builds the gravity that makes the throne come to him. His power is magnetic, not mechanical. He has learned that the most dangerous kind of dominance is not the one imposed, but the one others give willingly. They hand him authority because he does not beg for it. They follow him because his silence commands more faith than their leader's speeches. They trust him because he does not compete for their trust. That is the paradox of the powerful. Those who want power least are those who wield it best. In his solitude, he learns to see how systems truly function, not by morality, but by exchange. Every virtue has a price. Every alliance is a transaction disguised as loyalty. Every act of generosity hides the seed of debt. He studies these invisible trades with the detachment of an economist and the precision of a surgeon. He gives knowing that to give is to control. He withholds knowing that scarcity breeds demand. He uses kindness the way others use weapons, with calculation, not sentiment. He is not cruel, he is consequential. Cruelty seeks pleasure, consequence seeks control. When he punishes, it is never for emotion, it is for calibration. a measured strike that reminds without destroying. He knows that fear decays faster than respect, but both are necessary. He never lets them see which one they should feel. Ambiguity is the strongest chain. When they cannot predict him, they hesitate, and hesitation is defeat, disguised as caution. He sees the machinery of the world not as chaos, but as rhythm. Every state, every company, every institution is governed by cycles, growth, complacency, decline, collapse, renewal. The crowd resists these tides. He rides them. He knows when to withdraw, when to strike, when to vanish, when to return. Timing is the invisible currency of strategy. To act before the time is to destroy opportunity. To act after is to chase ghosts. The one who controls timing controls perception, and perception is the true battlefield. He watches how men decorate their weakness with virtue. They call hesitation patience, cowardice, morality, and indecision balance. He calls them by their true names and therefore cannot be deceived. The one who sees things as they are, not as he wishes them to be, already has the advantage, for he lives in truth while others live in theater, and every theater must eventually collapse when faced with reality's weight. He never forgets that every ruler lives within two prisons, the perception of others and the limits of his own discipline. The first he manipulates, the second he masters. That is how he remains untouchable. Most men become slaves to their appetites, lust, vanity, ego, but he has starved them until they serve him instead. He still feels them, but as servants, not masters. That is why he can walk among temptations without flinching. He has already conquered the battlefield within. He does not believe in fairness, for fairness does not exist in nature. The lion does not negotiate with the gazelle. The storm does not apologize to the sea. Nature is pure realism, unburdened by moral decoration, and so he aligns himself with its logic, neither cruel nor kind, only effective. He understands that compassion must be selective, or it becomes corruption. To save everyone is to destroy order. To rule, one must accept that mercy has limits, and limits are sacred. He no longer debates morality, he studies consequence. To him, good and evil are names the defeated give to power. What matters is endurance. Does it sustain or destroy? Does it strengthen or weaken? If it strengthens, it is necessary. If it weakens, it is forbidden. He lives by laws older than philosophy, those written not in books but in blood and survival. The dangerous man does not justify, he endures. He observes that every empire, no matter how vast, dies from within, not from rebellion, not from invasion, but from softness. Comfort corrodes vigilance. Praise replaces purpose. Pride replaces strategy. He trains himself to remain a foreigner, even in victory, to never feel at home in luxury, to never mistake applause for approval, for applause is the noise of those who wait for your fall. He has seen how the masses crave saviors, but crucify them once saved. Gratitude is a moment. Envy is permanent. So he helps without attachment, builds without vanity, and withdraws before worship begins. He knows that the crowd loves the idea of the leader more than the leader himself. The moment they no longer need him, they will bury him under the very statue they built in his image. The dangerous man avoids this grave by never becoming their symbol. He remains a shadow that shapes destiny but never becomes its hostage. He looks upon the world not with despair but with acceptance. He knows that human nature does not evolve, it repeats. The same betrayals, the same ambitions, the same fears dressed in new names. Power does not change form, only its stage changes. Kings once ruled through swords, now they rule through information. But the essence is the same: control perception, and you control reality. The tools evolve, but the instincts remain ancient. He moves through this modern jungle with the instincts of the old predator, silent, patient, precise. He knows that love, loyalty, and faith are words too often used by those who do not understand their cost. The dangerous man loves with intention, not impulse. He is loyal with calculation, not blindness. His faith is not in people, but in principled discipline, strategy, silence. He trusts no one completely, not even himself, for he knows the mind is treacherous when comfort whispers. That mistrust is not paranoia, it is clarity. He keeps his ambitions veiled, for visible ambition is an invitation to sabotage. The most efficient way to win is to appear uninterested. While others compete for visibility, he competes for leverage. He wins battles that others never see, because he fights them before they begin. His victories are invisible but permanent. His power is quiet but inevitable. The dangerous man who loves being alone is a paradox. Feared for his calm, respected for his restraint, hated for his independence, and admired for the very mystery that isolation gives him. He is proof that silence can be louder than armies, that absence can dominate presence, that stillness can move nations. He does not chase history, yet history will bend around his shadow. For when all others have exhausted themselves in the theater of noise, he will remain the last strategist, the final witness, the architect of what endures. And when the lights of empires flicker and fade, when the noise of politics dissolves into memory, when the world returns to the cold rhythm of necessity, he will still be there alone, unbroken, unbothered, because solitude was never his exile, it was his kingdom. He remembers the governors he once served under men with fine suits and trembling hands, who mistook access for authority. They believed that to stand in the palace was to possess power, but proximity is not dominion. They whispered in halls, yet feared their own shadows, because every favor they granted was a debt they owed, and every smile they forced was a confession of insecurity. He learned from their downfall that no man can rule what he depends on. When the storm came, and the storm always comes, they were swallowed, not by their enemies, but by the same courtiers they tried to please. Their names vanished from the marble walls, but their lessons carved themselves into his mind. Control does not come from position, it comes from detachment. He saw the general who conquered every field but won his own pride. When victory came, he demanded worship. Soldiers saluted him, citizens praised him, and he began to believe he was untouchable. That belief blinded him to the quiet movements around him, the advisors growing restless, the allies counting numbers, the servants exchanging looks. He forgot that the same people who kneel today are those who will hold the knives tomorrow. When the coup came, it was not loud. It was dinner, a toast, a quiet replacement of a name in the ledger. The general's death was not dramatic, only efficient. He learned then that power never truly kills you, it simply replaces you when you forget its nature. He once visited a city-state whose ruler believed that generosity would preserve peace. Every week he lowered taxes, built monuments, pardoned enemies. The citizens adored him, for a while. Then they began to expect it, then to demand it, then to despise him for not giving more. His mercy made them ungrateful, his kindness made them cruel. When he finally refused, they called him a tyrant. He fled his own city, hunted by those he fed. The dangerous man saw this and understood. Kindness without boundary breeds contempt faster than cruelty. To govern is not to please. It is to balance fear and favor like two sides of a blade. He met another kind of ruler, the merchant king, a master of appearances. He owned nothing outright but controlled everything indirectly. His name was never on contracts, his face never in meetings, but every decision passed through his invisible network. His influence was weightless, like air unseen, inescapable. When his competitors tried to destroy him, they found themselves strangled by their own alliances. He taught the dangerous man that real ownership is not legal but psychological. It lies in dependency. The one who feeds the system owns it, even if his hands never touch it. He once served beside a statesman who believed that integrity was armor. He spoke the truth in every room, no matter who sat there. For a while, he was admired. But soon admiration turned to isolation. Truth, untempered by timing, became his ruin. The court grew uneasy. His honesty made others feel naked. One night, the same men who had applauded him accused him of arrogance. They destroyed him not because he lied, but because he did not know when to stay silent. The dangerous man saw and never forgot. Truth without strategy is self-destruction dressed as virtue. He encountered a warrior whose legend spread faster than his discipline. The people adored him for his courage, his defiance, his victories. But fame became his battlefield. He began fighting for reputation instead of purpose. Every victory had to be seen. Every risk had to be remembered. And when one day he faced an enemy too quiet, too patient, too invisible, he could not fight what he could not see. He fell in silence, killed by a man whose name no one knew. The dangerous man learned then that the invisible hand always outlives the famous face. He once observed an empire crumble from within, not because of rebellion but because of abundance. Prosperity had softened the citizens. They no longer trained, no longer studied, no longer feared the loss of what they had built. Comfort made them forget the discipline that created comfort. Their libraries turned to theaters, their generals turned to merchants, their leaders turned to performers. When the first foreign army appeared on the horizon, the people did not resist, they negotiated. They surrendered not for survival but for convenience. The dangerous man understood. Civilizations do not fall when enemies grow strong, but when comfort makes defenders forget how to fight. He saw a council ruled not by strength, but by indecision. Every proposal had to be debated, every risk diluted by discussion. They called it democracy, but it was paralysis dressed as fairness. In the end, no one decided, and so everyone lost. The dangerous man watched their downfall and understood that leadership is not consensus, it is direction. The crowd can vote on desires, but only a ruler can command outcomes. Power shared, without hierarchy, dissolves into noise. He once met a foreign diplomat whose strength lay in manipulation. This man could turn rivals into allies and allies into hostages without raising his voice. He used compliments as chains and secrets as shields. When others spoke of peace, he spoke of timing. When they argued about morality, he spoke of leverage. He knew that no negotiation was ever about what was said, but about who needed what more. From him, the dangerous man learned that diplomacy is not about compromise. It is about patience disguised as cooperation. He witnessed an artist rise to influence, his work adored by the masses. But power came not from his art, but from his silence. When the crowd demanded explanations, he gave none. They filled his silence with meaning. Each observer believed the artist spoke to them alone. The dangerous man studied this and saw that mystery is the highest currency of influence. When you explain, you shrink. When you remain silent, you expand into their imagination. He saw a woman who rose from nothing to control a dynasty, not through seduction, but through observation. While others fought to be noticed, she listened. She remembered everything: tone, hesitation, gesture. She made no enemies because no one feared her. But when the old patriarch died, her knowledge became a blade sharper than armies. She reshaped alliances in weeks. She ruled without title, guided by the power of information. The dangerous man saw in her the perfection of invisible influence, that the most powerful are not those who command, but those who know. He walked through a prison where rebels were kept, men who once shouted of freedom. They had courage but no structure, passion but no patience. They believed fire alone could burn down tyranny, but fire without direction consumes itself first. The dangerous man saw their fate and learned that rebellion is not power, it is proof of reaction. The one who rules must not react, only calculate. He traveled to a mountain monastery once, where the abbot ruled hundreds of monks without raising his voice. Order was maintained not by punishment, but by rhythm. The bells, the routines, the silence, all replaced the need for command. He realized that the greatest control is not through force, but through design. When the system itself governs behavior, the ruler becomes unnecessary and therefore eternal. He once observed a scientist who changed nations, not through ideology but through invention. The machine he built reshaped economies, but he remained anonymous. His creation gave others wealth, power, fame, but he lived quietly, content with influence detached from ownership. The dangerous man saw in him a truth older than kings. The ultimate power is to create dependency without exposure. When the world cannot function without what you built, it belongs to you even if it doesn't know your name. He met a hermit who lived in the mountains, shunned by men but at peace with himself. The villagers called him mad, but when famine struck, it was he who knew which roots to eat, which herbs to heal. They returned to him humbled, desperate. Power returned to the one they mocked. The dangerous man learned that even rejection can be weaponized by patience. The world always circles back to the man who can survive without it. He once spoke to a soldier who confessed that the hardest part of war was not killing, but waiting. Waiting for orders, waiting for dawn, waiting for the next attack. It was in waiting that men broke. The dangerous man realized then that power is not found in action, but in the ability to remain unbroken during stillness. Those who can endure silence longer always win the war of will. And as he walked away from every battlefield, political, personal, psychological, he carried no trophies, no titles, no songs in his name. Only the quiet certainty that power is not about being followed, but about not needing to be. The dangerous man who loves being alone carries his empire within. Every thought a soldier, every decision a fortress, every silence a crown. Solitude, for the dangerous man, is not escape, it is evolution. It is the crucible where clarity replaces confusion and power refines itself into essence. In the quiet, where no voice interrupts, he confronts the truth that has destroyed so many before him, that the need for companionship often masks the fear of insignificance. Most men gather around noise because they cannot bear the echo of their own minds. But the one who loves being alone does not run from that echo. He studies it until it becomes symphony. In isolation, he no longer seeks identity through others. He manufactures it from within. His value ceases to depend on reaction, and his being ceases to depend on recognition. The dangerous man loves being alone because solitude restores proportion. The crowd magnifies trivial things, turns whispers into judgment, and desires into laws. But when he is alone, illusions shrink back to their rightful size. The false urgency of public life dissolves, and only what is essential remains. He sees that every ambition that cannot survive silence was never real. It was performance. Only that which endures solitude is worthy of pursuit. The rest he abandons without regret. In this stripping away, he becomes lighter, freer, untouchable. He loves being alone because isolation grants sovereignty over the inner court. No voices to manipulate him, no expectations to seduce him, no pity to weaken him. The mind, once scattered across 1,000 conversations, now obeys a single command, his own. This self-command is not meditation, it is monarchy. It is not the stillness of retreat, but the order of dominion. Every thought must serve the throne, every emotion must obey. The dangerous man understands that to lead nations, one must first lead this invisible kingdom of impulses, fears, and craving. Solitude gives him jurisdiction over himself, and that is the highest dominion. He loves being alone because it is the only environment where authenticity cannot hide. The crowd lets a man borrow conviction from applause, purpose from approval, and courage from witnesses. But alone there is no mirror but truth. Every weakness that public life flatters becomes visible. Every vanity that others feed starves. In that starvation, he grows. Solitude strips him of pretense until only strength remains. Not the strength that dominates others, but the strength that does not collapse when left with itself. He loves being alone because it grants immunity to influence. The world operates through contagion ideas, moods, opinions, fears, all spreading like infection. Solitude is his quarantine. It keeps his perception uncontaminated, his decisions uncontested by fashion or frenzy. He does not think through trends, he thinks through time. Without the chatter of imitation, his thoughts regain their original gravity, and in that mental silence, strategy is born. The man who loves being alone does not copy, he constructs. His clarity becomes his signature, and his detachment his weapon. He loves being alone because absence multiplies value. Presence is abundant, absence is rare. Those who cannot remain unseen become predictable, and predictability kills power. The dangerous man withdraws not to vanish, but to recalibrate the meaning of his reappearance. Distance forces the world to remember what it took for granted. He understands that scarcity commands more loyalty than abundance. The fewer his words, the more they weigh. The rarer his presence, the more it is desired. His silence becomes negotiation, his distance persuasion. He loves being alone, because only in solitude can he see the machinery beneath emotion. The movements of the world, its wars, alliances, betrayals, are not born from ideology but from hunger. The hunger for safety, the hunger for importance, the hunger to belong. The man who stands alone transcends these hungers. He observes them as patterns, not prisons, and by refusing to participate in the collective hunger, he gains leverage over it. Solitude makes him immune to the illusions that enslave others, for he sees that every attachment carries a leash and every dependence a master. He loves being alone because it allows him to measure time by growth, not distraction. Each hour alone is a ledger entry of power compounded. While others fill silence with entertainment, he fills it with alignment between thought and action, between will and execution. His solitude is not the stillness of withdrawal, but the rhythm of sharpening. He does not count minutes, he counts transformations. The longer he remains unseen, the more decisive his next move becomes. Solitude transforms him from participant into orchestrator, from actor into author. He loves being alone because loneliness has no dominion over him. He has walked through it long enough to recognize it not as an enemy, but as an illusion, a shadow cast by dependency. When dependency dies, loneliness disappears. What remains is space, space to think, to plan, to build. In this space, he is never idle, never empty. The solitude others fear is his workshop. The stillness others avoid his council chamber. Where they hear silence, he hears command. Where they feel isolation, he feels reign. He loves being alone because solitude is the only environment where ambition becomes clean. In the crowd, ambition is vanity, endlessly compared and contaminated by envy. Alone, ambition purifies into purpose. It no longer seeks validation, it seeks execution. The dangerous man no longer climbs for display, he climbs for dominion. His victories are not broadcast because the applause of others is not the measure of his ascent. The summit he seeks is invisible, and so are the battles that lead to it. He loves being alone because it allows him to see human behavior from altitude. When one stands apart, patterns emerge. He no longer reacts to individuals, he reads systems. Emotions that once seemed personal now appear predictable. Betrayal is no longer shocking, it is statistical. Praise is no longer intoxicating, it is transactional. In solitude, he replaces reaction with pattern recognition, and pattern recognition with command. To understand men, one must first stand outside them. To rule the game, one must first step off the board. He loves being alone because silence gives him something the crowd never will: continuity. The crowd forgets. It moves from cause to cause, outrage to outrage, never holding a single thought long enough for it to mature. But the man in solitude cultivates continuity like a garden. His ideas evolve in quiet seasons, unpolluted by public noise. His strategies age like iron, forged by patience. What others call delay, he calls design. What others abandon, he completes. The world mistakes his stillness for inactivity. They will understand only when his plans emerge whole, unstoppable, irreversible. He loves being alone because solitude is the closest state to freedom. Not freedom granted, but freedom earned, the freedom to think without interference, to act without counsel, to create without permission. The crowd speaks of freedom but fears its cost, for true freedom demands responsibility, and responsibility demands isolation. The dangerous man has paid that price. His solitude is not imprisonment, it is sovereignty. It is the border of his republic, patrolled by discipline and guarded by silence. He loves being alone because he understands that power, like fire, must be contained. Too much contact, and it dissipates. Too much sharing, and it burns the wrong things. Solitude is his containment field, keeping his power concentrated, his energy unspent, his will precise. The constant touch of others would scatter it, their emotions would corrode it. But in aloneness, His power condenses, his intent crystallizes, and his influence becomes invisible yet inevitable. He loves being alone because isolation gives him clarity of loyalty. Surrounded by no one, he knows exactly who remains. He sees which desires return, which vanish, which temptations still whisper. Solitude exposes the hierarchy of his soul. What remains loyal within him after all voices are gone, that is his truth, and that truth once found becomes his law. He loves being alone because it is the final rebellion. The world trains men to depend, to crave witness, to seek belonging, to fear stillness. The dangerous man breaks that chain. His detachment is not nihilism, it is defiance. It is the refusal to be defined by the echo of others. To love solitude is to love mastery, to stand at the summit of the self where no applause reaches, no comparison matters, and no weakness hides. This is why he is dangerous. Because nothing can be taken from the man who needs nothing. Because the one who commands himself commands the world. And because the man who loves being alone is no longer searching for power, he has become it. Power begins to rot the moment a man begins to need witnesses to it. That is why the dangerous man keeps his distance. He preserves his authority by isolation. A ruler who must be loved cannot rule long, for love is fickle and bound to fortune. But the one who remains apart governs through necessity, not affection. He becomes needed rather than adored. Dependency lasts longer than devotion. The crowd will not die for him out of loyalty, but they will obey him out of calculation. That is the essence of dominion, not sentiment, but structure. He understands that in solitude lies the one privilege denied to kings, the privilege to think without consequence. Public life demands posture. Private reflection demands truth. The dangerous man grants himself that truth even when it condemns him. He dissects his motives with cruelty, cuts away illusions with precision, and studies his flaws as a tactician studies terrain. For he knows that a man who refuses to confront his own corruption will one day serve it. The tyrant is not born from ambition, but from blindness to it. To love solitude is to rule without needing throne or court. A throne is a visible symbol meant for the obedience of others, but solitude is an invisible throne meant for the governance of self. It is where strategy is conceived without counsel, where deception is planned without witness, where weakness is confessed without humiliation. Every plan that survives the silence of solitude emerges immune to persuasion. The man who consults only himself is never betrayed by advice. He knows that the crowd confuses movement for progress. They are like ants on a burning log, running not toward purpose but away from fear. The dangerous man moves rarely, but every motion is decisive. His stillness is not paralysis, it is calculation. He waits for the exact alignment of need, opportunity, and perception. He acts not when he feels ready, but when others have exhausted themselves with noise. Timing, not strength, determines victory, and time, in the hands of the patient, becomes a weapon sharper than steel. Solitude teaches him to see how fragile human loyalty truly is. Men follow not those who inspire them, but those who frighten them least. They will abandon ideals, oaths, and friendships to avoid discomfort. Knowing this, he does not condemn them, he uses them. He builds systems so tight that betrayal becomes unprofitable. Fear may fade, love may shift, but interest endures. The wise ruler binds his people not through virtue but through necessity. He does not ask for their hearts, he ensures he holds what they cannot live without. The dangerous man who loves being alone has learned that power cannot be shared without being diluted. Alliances, though useful, are temporary instruments. Each ally is a rival in waiting, each agreement a potential chain. Solitude frees him from both. He enters alliances as one enters a storm, prepared to leave the moment the winds change. Dependence breeds vulnerability, and vulnerability breeds downfall. The wise ruler remains solitary, even when surrounded. He listens, he nods, he agrees, but he never binds his will to another. He also knows that virtue, if displayed too brightly, invites suspicion. The man who appears too good must one day prove it through weakness. Therefore, he hides his moral intentions behind practicality. It is safer to be thought cold than naive, better to appear ruthless than irrelevant. Power is sustained not by appearing perfect, but by appearing necessary. And necessity is the one virtue the world cannot destroy. Solitude keeps him from the intoxication of influence. To be praised too often is to lose the taste for discipline. Praise breeds comfort, and comfort is the breeding ground of decay. In the quiet, he cleanses himself of flattery. He remembers that every empire collapses from within, that every conqueror is devoured by his own luxury. By loving solitude, he escapes this corruption. He remains lean in thought, deliberate in motion, unsoftened by adoration. He stands apart not because he hates mankind, but because he understands it too well. Men are governed by appetite, fear, and appearance. To master them, he must master detachment. In the solitude he cherishes, he becomes both the observer and the manipulator of these instincts. And so, while others seek noise to affirm their existence, he governs in silence, his influence unseen yet absolute. For power that can be heard can also be challenged. But power that exists in silence cannot be attacked, it can only be obeyed. In the end, he walks alone not as an exile, but as a sovereign. The silence that others call emptiness is his dominion. The distance they call coldness is his crown. He has learned that to be feared is transient, to be loved is fragile, but to be self-contained is eternal. Nothing binds him now, not opinion, not expectation, not affection. The world may shift its loyalties, but he remains unshaken, because his authority no longer depends on them. His solitude has become his fortress, and within it, he is untouchable. He knows that the crowd will never understand him. They will say he was distant, detached, unfeeling. But power is not a performance for their comfort. It is the discipline to endure their misunderstanding. He no longer seeks to be known. He seeks to be effective. The results of his will are his testimony. The order he creates his legacy. History may not remember his name, but it will move in the shape of his decisions. The dangerous man who loves being alone is the final evolution of control. He rules not through armies, not through wealth, not through spectacle, but through the one force that cannot be conquered, self-mastery. He does not flee from the world. He stands above it, unmoved by its noise, untempted by its vanity. When the world grows loud again, when nations crumble under their own confusion, he will still walk in silence, unhurried, observing the collapse with the calm of one who has already conquered chaos within. For his kingdom was never made of land or followers. It was made of discipline, perception, and will. And in that stillness, where no applause echoes, he reigns not over others, but over himself. And that, in the end, is the highest form of power.